Thank you. Thank you. Excellent. On the topic of religion, I'd actually like to ask Samira a question. Uh, in your opinion, are the world religions, the major world religions, still relevant? In today's enlightened and globalized and interconnected world, can religion still be a source of ethics and values and morals? Or are they outdated relics of a different time?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. All religion teaches good values and how to deal with others and how to treat others. And we have so much to learn from that. The challenge becomes is we forget who we are. And in some way, we need to repolish and relearn maybe, or really understand who are we becoming. You know, we kind of believe something and then we act differently. As Jordanian Ustaz said a little while ago, we're very accepting. And I want to say, no, we're not very accepting. We think we're very accepting. And we kind of lose our identity. We have this beautiful picture of who we are, but when it comes down to it, we're not living it. We forgot what it means. It's just an idea. It's not really a reality. Let me put it in a simple form. I say I love my wife and I love my kids, but on the reality, how am I treating my wife and how am I treating my kids? And I need others in my life to help me say, Samir, you're really not being fair to your wife or to your kids, or the things that you believe in, you're really not living. And that's where we need to go back and re-examine our faith of what is the Quran saying, what is the Bible saying about how I should treat my enemy, or how should I treat my neighbor, or how I should treat our guests. So in our heart, or in our mind, we say that we're this, but when it comes day on day to live this, it's a lot harder. We need to re-examine that. And I appreciate the effort that His Majesty put in to the message, the Amman message, to redefine and bring down what is it, what are we really made for? What do we really believe? Even the common word is what's common between Muslims and Christians and even Jews. What's those common things that we really need to hold on to and not to let go of, and to really not just believe, to live out. Because one thing is what I believe is I want to be nice to everybody, but when I go out, I scream at this and, cut off that guy and, do all the things that I don't want to do, but I believe that I should be doing. And that's where the identity issue is, who are we really becoming on the way, on this journey that we're living on? That needs to be re-examined, that needs to be re-looked at and visited on an individual level, on a family level, on a community level.
Ahmed, is there an alternate version of Islam that can be put in place to fulfill the youth's identity gap? A version that will fulfill the youth's spiritual needs as well as socioeconomic needs of self-determination without resorting to violence and extreme ideologies?
Well, maybe. I'll do my best. I'll do my best. What I believe is that it's not necessarily a specific version of Islam that needs to be pursued. And to make that point clearer, we can just look at real examples of different communities across the world where Muslims are living, are participating, are being active parts of the societies that they are in. And we can see that in North America and still in Europe, in the UK, in Australia, in a number of countries, in South Africa. So again, I can't remember the specific city, but there are numerous occasions where elected officials happen to be Muslim. So that really tells you that it is okay to be religious, to identify with a specific faith, to dress differently, maybe have a beard, and also, have a job in Toronto, maybe run for mayor, maybe do all these other things. There does not necessarily have to be this us versus them issue. I think the us versus them is much more emphasized in our part of the world. And that's where it becomes problematic, and that's where I would like to refer back to the talk of Dr. Omar and Mr. Saad regarding the role of the state in ensuring civic practices by the members of society. Thank you.
Shifting it back to Dr. Omar, it can be said that there's a convergence of global values and thoughts which are evident through global agreements, charters, and conventions, as well as examples of deep economic and political unity, such as the European Union, where there's this new European identity that's being championed. Yet in the MENA region, we continue to see more and more division in our countries. Arab youth are facing an identity crisis. Dr. Omar, how can youth participate in the process of forming their new 21st century identities? And what role will religion play in forming this identity?
Let's try to dissect this notion of identity a little bit. And we all talk about identity, but let's try to understand what forms identity. And I want to suggest that there are three important components in identity. We've talked about them this morning at various points, and all of them are problematic. A shared understanding and a real understanding of history is a very important part of identity. So having an understanding of where we come from, what happened to us to get us here, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The real history of people is important, so that you have a sense of we didn't fall here from Mars. So there are evolutions that happened that got us to where we are. Ustaz Saad and Mr. Samir and Ahmed were talking about the convoluted perception that we have of history. For us, unfortunately, history is part of the sacred. The history itself becomes part of the religious structure. We have to distinguish between the sacred, which is the Quran and the Hadith, and then the history that was made by people conflicting with each other throughout 1400 years of history. When we apply sacredness to the whole history, we become unable to critique it, and therefore unable to improve, and therefore Muhammad Abd al-Jabiri, one of our foremost philosophers, talks about the difference between groups that have a tradition and traditional groups. الكائنات اللي إلها تراث والكائنات التراثية. Groups with tradition can always look back at the tradition. Groups that are traditional are imprisoned by their tradition and cannot interact with it. So unless we are able to deal with history in a different way, part of our identity will never be formed in a healthy way. The second part also we talked about is when we talk about our values. What do we stand for? Here, I fully agree, we have schizophrenia between what we say and what we do. And that is also a function of the fact that we have to, when we practice our belonging to our religion, is that we have to say certain things, and there is authority looking over us. One of the biggest problems I think we have in the way Islam is practiced is religious authority. One of the beauties of the religion is there wasn't supposed to be authority, intermediate authority by human beings. You have a text, you have a tradition, you read it because you have a mind and you have a heart, and you decide. You'll be judged sometime after death. You would not be judged by human beings on this earth and lashed and whipped and what have you by human beings who are judging your religious practice. This is a major problem, and it leads, this judgmental life that we live leads us to live dual lives. We say we believe in certain things and we do other things. Even if we believe in the right things, we don't have a common language to talk about it. Everybody talks about, why is it that when we go to Canada and the US and Europe, we immediately follow traffic rules, and when we come back to Amman, we don't. It's partly about we switch things, but when I come to the war, I know the rule, and I would love to follow the rule, but over time I start to realize that when I stop, somebody comes from the left and right. So gradually my sense of identity and belief in a common value that we will all follow it, or 90% of us will follow it, evaporates, and it becomes the survival of the fittest type of atmosphere when we would continue. So history, values about the present and how we practice, and the third item is the future, a common vision about the future. And that can only, in my view, be developed through democratic institutions, where we can talk about our dreams, our frustrations, and try to do something about it through a process that helps societies resolve their conflicts and develop a future identity. We are missing on all three items, history, present, and future, and that's why we ultimately go back to an identity that is sub-national, whatever that is. It's tribal, it is regional, it's east and west, north and south, and we appeal to a sort of an afterlife perfect world that we cannot even start to realize it in our lives.
Thank you for that insight. Appreciate it. I would like to do a 2-in-1 actually, for the sake of time, because Arabs are great in time. So let's stick within this half an hour that we have remaining. The 2-in-1, I'd like to ask one general question for all the panelists actually, and at the same time, if you would like to mention any closing remarks, please feel free to do so. So we'll take 2 minutes from each speaker. If you would like to ask or answer the question, feel free to do so. If religion's main purpose is to bring peace to ourselves and to the world, why aren't we seeing this in its full potential? What could be done to correct it? Is it proper education? Is it laws, regulations, or something else? I'll give the mic to Ahmed and just bring it down. Use the wasp mic. Take this mic, I take this one.
Would you like to start? I need to formulate an answer.
I'll start. I think so many times we're always looking at the other to change. When Ustaz Said change, I'll change. When Ustaz Ahmed change, I'll change. And I think that's a big problem, is we don't want to change ourselves. When my wife starts changing, then I change. When she's start being nice to me, I'll be nice to her. That's a human problem that all human in East and West struggle with. And I think that's the core issue of change. Where does change come from? Does it come from the top or the bottom? or both. It does come from both. But so many times humanly, we say, well, when the system change, I'll change. When my friend changes, I change. And we all miss it. We all lose. We keep blaming others and for our own growth and taking our own responsibility for the situation.
Samir, you are mentioning your wife so often. Is she watching or something? I'm thinking of something to mention my wife. It's not happening. Right? Anyway, I believe it's not about understanding religion. This is a very individual issue. I want to a little bit develop the idea of the future, that I believe, contrary to a lot of people, that we can start without history. In fact, strategic thinking says that you need to imagine where you want to go and go back. We are imprisoned in trying to understand analysis or over-analysis history, what happened, why we are here. I'm suggesting let's see what we want to be. And my political solution is well-known one. It's the civil state, الدولة المدنية. Civil state whereby religion becomes important and irrelevant in the sense of you are allowed to be religious. You can be as religious as you want to be. However, you are under the rule of law, which will allow you to be individual, change, introduce yourself, promote your emotions and your ambition without being imprisoned to previous or historical kind of understanding or rules and regulations. I'm thinking of how much years and time we spend trying to understand ourselves in the history. I wasn't there. I don't want to understand them. I wasn't between Shia and Sunnah and Saqifat bin Sa'ida when they differ. I don't want to be there. I want to be in the future, and the future is very simple. They find it, they discover it, they practice it. Now, they will tell you, no, civil state is against religion. Let me explain what I mean by civil state. Civil state is a state whereby it allows you to be as religious as you want, or not to be religious, without labeling you. You are individual. You are entitled to your individual freedom. And I believe without us buying into the theory of my individual freedom is more important than anything else, we will not have the courage to fight for our future. The last point I want to make here, that, by the way, even if you go to Islamic literature, you will find a lot of attempt to try to understand what is that pure Islamic virgin. It's endless effort. So what I suggest, provided that you are doing under the umbrella of law, which means prevents violence, you are entitled to any religion you want and to any understanding of religion that you want. But don't impose it on me. لا غيرك ولا تغيرني. هاي الدولة المدنية. In this sense, we can go out of history, trying to think in the future, and introduce to our youth a model for the future. Why should I imprison my child of understanding of the Quran for somebody who did it 1,000 years ago? She is entitled to understand this book the way she wants and to practice it the way she wants, provided that she will not take violence against people in imposing her understanding of this virgin. That's why I say my maybe suggestion that for the future for our youth, if I may, that let's think of the future. For the first time, let's forget about history. Let's think what kind of values, and I bet you will find it in all religions. including the Buddhism and other religions. Because a human being is very much keen to accept common values. You will not find any nation in the world, any nation, with religion or without religion, says that killing is okay. You will not find this. So instead of being busy trying to impose what we call a new kind, tolerant kind of understanding of Islam, tolerant kind of understanding of Judaism, no. Let's think of a civil state which prevents you from using violence and at the same time allows you to your religion and to your understanding of religion under the umbrella of law. Thank you.
Same question. I fully agree and endorse Ustaz Said's view about the future. The problem I think we have with the past, and the reason I think we cannot purely dismiss it, is when we say Al-Islam huwa al-hal, we are actually appealing to a utopian history, ideal history, that in reality never existed. And if you compare your present or your future to something utopian or ideal, it will never measure up. Today, the Brits, the United Kingdom, is celebrating 750 years of democracy. They're celebrating the Magna Carta, and they are reflecting on history. It's an important piece in their history that they appeal to every time things seem to be. There's nothing sacred about it, but they will remember it. Same with in the United States, when they think about their constitution and the importance of the constitution, and how major it is to make a small amendment on a constitution that everybody agreed to. There is a process. It's laden with process. I ascribe to saying where the civic state model, I completely ascribe to, because that's the only way we can move forward, giving individuals their freedom to think, to talk, to question everything, without using means of violence against others. It is not, the literature, international literature, talks about the Arab exceptionalism, al-istithna'iyya al-Arabiyya. Why have Arabs not managed to create democratic countries, while in Africa, Latin America, Asia, that transformation is happening? We need to empower ourselves to say, we cannot simply blame it on the others. We cannot simply take comfort in the conspiracy theory and say, الغرب ما بده, the West doesn't. There is no doubt that every part of the world and the superpowers have their interest in this region. So they do in Latin America and in Asia and in everywhere. That goes without saying. But when we say this is all pre-planned, we are giving up our roles as active citizens who can change history. And history is changed by people. It is not changed by plans. It is changed by people. And that's where I want to really thank you for doing this, for having, I think the fact that the Shapers is made up of youth, is you are empowered to change the future in ways that that's how history is made. So it is about the future, and I do think there is a way out if we empower ourselves, as Samir also was saying.
So for my closing remarks, and regretfully, since we don't have anyone, let's say from the religious establishment, to maybe present that point of view, I'd like to think just a little bit, very quickly, about what is the role of religion? What does religion really say? And being from an Islamic background, I thought of the one verse, or sorry, the one chapter, surah, which sort of summarizes everything. And I think many of us memorize this. It's Surah Al-Asr, which says, وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. So if we translate this, it starts with an oath, by time. Humanity is in loss, and then it gives the exceptions, the cases where humanity is not at loss. The first exception is إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, except for those who believe. So obviously, religion is about belief in a transcendent power. So the first one is belief. But let's look at the others. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, and those that do good. So obviously, doing good sort of implies that there's an interaction between people. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ, and those that, let's say, advise righteousness, which is also a human interaction between people. And the last one is وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, and those who advise patience, which is also a human interaction. And this chapter has been quoted as being the summary of all of Islam. So when you really look at it, what does religion tell us? It tells us a very positive message, which is it's trying to improve human interaction. It is a system just like any other system. And there are numerous positive aspects about it when it is applied appropriately. And for I guess my last point is, let's not dismiss religions as a system. They are a system. They could work, they could not work. They are just as viable as any other system. But in today's world, we're interconnected. We share many, many values. Religion still has a role to play, and we should look at it from that perspective, taking what is good, what is right, and critically understanding what it originally says, not what we think it says. Thank you.
There's no need to draw conclusions of what everyone said, because their statements are self-sufficient. So I will simply leave it at that. And I guess I encourage all of us to get to know our identities, or to create our identities, and be sure to hold on to that and not to let it go and not let it be taken away.